And so with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Polly.
Oh, thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the invite. I'm very honored. Thank you. My name is Polly Pistol, and I'm an alcoholic. And by God's grace, in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't had a drink since April the 11th of 1977. And for that, I am eternally grateful. I have a home group, and that's the West Connect group in Jacksonville, Florida. We meet on Monday night at 7 o'clock, and if you're ever in Jacksonville, I invite you to a very enthusiastic AA group. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor, and I sponsor, and the women I sponsor, and they sponsor, and so on and so forth. And I'm very delighted to be here and to come to Arizona. I'm telling you, I love Zoom. I used to get to travel a lot. And 5 years ago, my husband got sick and I haven't been able to travel. But here I am in Arizona, and I didn't even have to get on an airplane. So it's absolutely fabulous. I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy to see people I love and admire that are on this Zoom call. So it's just thank you a lot. It's always a privilege, an absolute privilege to be able to do anything in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. The big book tells me that I should share in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm trying to be like today. And I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. And I want to start out by saying, if any kind of childhood trauma or abuse or anything like that is necessary for you to become an alcoholic, then I shouldn't be here, because that's not my story. I was a very loved child. I was a very adored child, really. And I was an only child. And I come from parents who did not have a lot of money, but what they wanted to do was sacrifice and give me everything any little girl would ever want to have. What happened is in a few months, I'm going to be 80 years old. And when I was a little girl, mothers didn't work, but my mother worked. And the reason I just said she worked so that she could give me things that any little girl would want. And what happened is I didn't like her working. I wanted her to be home like other mothers. But she wanted me to have dancing lessons and gymnastic lessons and all those things. And so they worked and sacrificed to give me those things. Now, I have an immense appreciation for that today, but I didn't. I did not appreciate what my parents did for me. Really, I started appreciating it even though before I got sober, but nothing like the way I felt after I got sober, and I got to see what amazing parents I had. But whatever was wrong with me, it's like my mother was a beautiful seamstress. She would make my dancing costumes, she made all my formals for school, and she made my clothes. And I was so ungrateful. I would just scream at her, I don't want you to make my clothes. I want to buy clothes like the other girls do. And there's another big book, and that big book, it says there's nothing worse than an ungrateful child. And that's really what I was. I just did not appreciate the parents I had. And whatever that was, that I didn't appreciate the parents I have, it's just always I felt like there was something wrong with me. It just seemed like I was just uncomfortable in my own skin. Just kind of an uptight, and clenched my fists a lot. And I had jaw problems and everything because I clenched my jaw. Just always seemed like I was just uptight. I don't know what other word to use. Also, I was raised Southern Baptist. And I want to bring that up because I hope when we finish tonight that you will hear my journey to the God of my understanding today. Because I did not have anywhere near the God I have today as a little girl. I was raised Southern Baptist, and that is a very, very fundamental religion. They have these ministers who scream from the podium things like, you're born a sinner, you're going to burn in hell, and just yelling at the top of their lungs. Their faces are red and their veins are sticking out. And I just never, ever felt like I would ever be good enough for God. And my mother used to say, we live in a God-fearing home. And I know she meant that in a good way. But what happened is that was my relationship with God. I feared him. I feared that I was going to do something wrong, or I'd already done it, and I was going to burn in hell. That's how I felt, that was going to be my destiny, to burn in hell. And also, this Baptist preacher is also preaching, thou shalt not drink. That was a sin as well, to drink. When I was 18 years old, I married an Air Force officer. And I just thought I'd married my knight in shining armor, and we were going to sail off into the sunset and live happily ever after. I had married a bomber pilot, and this man was going to be gone for years at a time. And I was going to have to be responsible for myself. And if the truth be known, I don't want to be responsible for myself today. I certainly didn't want to be responsible at 18. But I had married him, and I had not a clue what I had signed up for. I had no idea. And he and I, our first duty station, where I grew up in Port Arthur, Texas, and our first duty station is Sacramento, California. And here we are heading off to California, and I mean, it was so beautiful. We went to Yosemite, and all of these places were so absolutely gorgeous. And I just thought, this is the way it was going to be. And we had been there about 2 weeks, and I got this invitation in the mail with a big red mandatory stamped on it. And it was from the base commander's wife. And I was invited to a coffee. And of course, it was mandatory that I attend this coffee. Now, I have this feeling, I've always, ever since as long as I can remember, had these feelings of inadequacy, like I just didn't measure up to the other girls in my class. I just didn't measure up. I never felt like I was ever good enough. And I just knew that these ladies were sophisticated and educated, and I definitely wasn't that. I was 18 years old with a high school education, and I just felt like I was just going to walk into this and be just horrified by who these women would be. And I ended up going to that coffee that day, and the base commander's wife stood at a podium, and all of us little second lieutenants' wives were sitting at tables. And she began to talk to us. And she began to tell us what it was going to be our responsibility to do in order to enhance our husband's career. And she began to tell us that we would attend all of the functions. We would attend all of the officers' wives' functions. We would have the right dinner parties. We would attend the right dinner parties. And I just sat there horrified. I am a hick from Texas. We just sit down and eat. We don't do any, I had no idea what was going to happen. So when that coffee was over, I just headed for the nearest bookstore to get a book on etiquette. A couple of weeks later was an officer's wives luncheon. And of course, I was expected to attend that luncheon, which I did. And I went to the luncheon with those same feelings of inadequacy. And at that luncheon, I went into the dining area, and there was this long table, and it had glasses on one end, and it had this fountain with liquid coming out of it on the other end. And I saw these women picking up a glass and putting it under the fountain. So I picked up a glass and I put it under the fountain. Now, I had not had a drink of alcohol until this moment. And I was 18 years old, and I can tell you that my first drink was a really wussy drink. It was sherry. But what happened is that drink has been implanted in my mind as if it happened yesterday. And nobody told me, Polly, you're going to be in Alcoholics Anonymous and when you turn 36 years old, and you're going to need to remember this drink. Now but that drink is implanted in my mind. And I took that drink of alcohol, and I can still feel it. It warmed my throat. It just warmed all the way down to my belly button. I just seemed, for the first time, I could just take a breath. I could just unclench my fist. It just seemed to just relax me, just seemed to just give me that exactly what it says in the doctor's opinion. It gave just having that feeling of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. And what happened is I put that glass up under that fountain again, and I drank that second glass of sherry. Now that's all I drank to my recollection. But I think that I did not get drunk or disorderly or anything like that. What it did for me was just give me that feeling of ease and comfort. And I had a sense of okayness in that room with these women. Now, I did not become a falling down drunk right away. I just kind of had my alcoholism just progressed very slow, well, pretty slowly. I drank for 18 years. And I did not know, but whatever is inside of me that makes me mentally and bodily different from my fellows, I had just ignited with that alcohol. Now, I did not know it that day. I did not even know it until I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But my life that day was altered forever. Because whatever is in me that gives me an allergy to alcohol, I had just put alcohol to it. And at first, it was just going out to have drinks at night, not even every day, going to a dinner party, going to a party, whatever. And then it was drinks before dinner. And then it was drinks with dinner, and then it was drinks after dinner, and more drinks and more drinks. And it just sort of happened like that. I had two sons, and with my first son, I did not drink alcohol during my entire pregnancy. I felt like that I shouldn't drink. So I know the big book says any of us could have quit at any time. So at that time, I still had a choice. I decided I didn't think it would be good to drink and be pregnant. On my second pregnancy, I never even gave it a thought. And that was 2 years later that I drank with my second child. My alcoholism did not become really apparent, nor did I go into blackouts that I can remember until my kids were about 6 and 7. And then I started to have blackouts. I started to be able to not show up at their functions. I started to not be able to take care of my sons. And this would go on for a long time, that I was not able. Now, my husband was going to be gone and he was going to be gone for years at a time, and I was left with these children. So, and it was my responsibility to take care of these children. And I want you to know, as my disease of alcoholism progressed, so did my abuse to my children. And I could not, I had no idea. I can still remember having to go to a dinner party, and it was not okay to be drunk and disorderly. And I can remember to have to kind of hold on to a drink and sip, because I was so afraid I might get drunk and then I didn't know it was a blackout, but just not be able to remember where I was. I didn't understand what was happening to me. And me to just come home and just fall on my knees in front of the liquor cabinet and hold the bottle up, because the phenomena of craving was so great, and I had to stop the craving. As my disease progressed, as I said, so did the abuse to my children. And I was the kind of mother that would throw my children into the wall. I would hit them. I would scream at them. I would neglect them. I could not take care of them. And it got to the point that I could not put my children to bed at night, and I could not get them up in the morning for breakfast. I absolutely could not take care of my children. Now, this is not the only thing that was going on. In 1973, and I got sober in 77, my husband was 100% disabled from the military. At 36 years old, he had congestive heart failure. They think that he was a victim of Agent Orange. And his heart was so large that he could hardly take a breath or walk across the floor. And he was bedridden about 80% of the time. So not only could I not take care of my children, I could not take care of my husband, and my sons had to do I had to do that. I would I would drink, I would pass out, I would go into a blackout, I'd see what I had done, I'd see that I hadn't taken care of my husband, and I would be so horrified. Who does that? Who does that? I just thought I was possessed or evil or something. Who does that? And I just was so ashamed and so horrified at who and what I was that I just took another drink. And also, 3 hours away in Abilene, Texas, my daddy was dying of colon cancer in the last year of my sobriety, my last year of my drinking. He was dying of colon cancer, and I couldn't get there because I was too drunk to drive there, and I'm his only child. And I could not, and all of this stuff, I just thought that I was the worst, most possessed human being, and I didn't understand. I didn't know anything about alcoholism. I had no idea. I didn't even know another alcoholic when I came to detox for the first time. I didn't even, and today I still don't know anybody in the military. I've never run across anybody who was in AA, so I don't know if anybody is. I just didn't know anybody who was an alcoholic. And and there's no alcoholism in my family. I didn't have any alcohol. I just didn't know what that was. I had seen Days of Wine and Roses and I'll Cry Tomorrow, but it was just a movie to me. What happened is I had a car wreck, and not a bad car wreck, just a car wreck. And my husband said, "Polly, there's a treatment center and it's not far from our house, and I wish you would go." And that night I entered treatment, and this was in January of 1977. I entered this treatment center, but it wasn't a treatment center, it was a detox center. And I entered this detox center. They gave me some nice little pills. It was like late in the evening or afternoon. And I didn't even wake up until the next afternoon. And I got up and they told me to go into the day room with the other people who were there in detox. And I went in there and I sat down. Now, if any of you have been in detox or treatment, you know, everybody sits around and tells their war stories. So these people were talking about, some of them were divorced, some of them had been to jail, some of them had been to prison, and they all cuss like sailors. Now, when I went in there, I didn't even say the F word. Now, I'm really good at it today, but I didn't say it then. And I was just horrified. And I looked around at these people and I said, I'm not like these people. I'm not like them. My husband says only an alcoholic can lay in the gutter feeling superior to those looking down on him. And that was me. I felt superior to these people sitting there. And what happened was is I identified with none of them. But I ended up having a Jenner House romance in detox. You know, where sick falls in love with sick and you walk off into happy destiny. Now I walk off with this guy. My 2 sons are now taking care of their dad. And they're 14 and 16 years old. And they're taking care of their dad. And I run off with this guy. And 58 days later, I'm 12-stepped by the director of that detox center and brought back into that detox center. And I've been beaten up and numerous and others, sundry other things. And I am a mess. And I'm thinking, there is no way. I've got so much shame on me now by that behavior, what happened in that motel room, all of this stuff. There's just no way. I love when Clancy says, my problem was sobriety. That was it. How can I live sober? Who can do this? Who does these things? Who behaves like, I mean, I just couldn't even imagine anybody doing what I did. How do you do that? And I just couldn't stand who and what I was. But I knew that I had to stay, I was going to stay there for that 7 days. Now I'm telling you today, I believe with all my heart that she still sits here. That woman who abuses her children, who could never show up for the people she loved, I know she's still in there. I know that she's there. The only thing, and I know the big book tells me that if I rest on my laurels, I cannot rest on my laurels, I will drink again. And I know that today, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me that I get a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And I know for me, there is nothing that I wouldn't do for Alcoholics Anonymous. There's not too many 12 steps I can do. There's not too many people I can sponsor. There's not too much service I can do. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for this program because I never, ever want her to show up again. What happened for me is I knew that I could not live sober. So when that 7-day detox was up, I got a bottle of scotch and a bottle of Valium, and I checked into a motel. I don't believe that there's anybody on this Zoom that doesn't have an angel in your life, someone who leads us to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had such a woman in my life. She knew nothing about the disease of alcoholism, but she loved me. And she said that something came over her. And I know that this something was God working in my life through her. And she drove around until she found my car parked outside this motel. And I hadn't shut the door all the way. I just closed it. And she opened it and she saw me laying there and she called 911. And on April the 8th of 1977, I was pronounced dead on arrival in a hospital in Bedford, Texas. Needless to say, I was resuscitated, and I sit here tonight on this Zoom. God has worked in my life so many times without my permission. He continued to interfere in my life, thank God. Because what happened was, because I had tried to take my life, I was put on one of those 72-hour holds and carted off to a psychiatric hospital. And that was enough time for my husband to obtain a court order from a Fort Worth judge that I was a detriment to myself and others, and I was court committed to treatment. God interfered in my life when Frank 12-stepped me out of that motel room and brought me back to that detox center. God interfered in my life when my girlfriend drove around and found me in that motel room and called 911 and saved my life. Frank had saved my life. She had saved my life. And my husband interfered. Again, God interfered in my life when my husband got that court order and I was sent to treatment. And it was a 28-day treatment center. And I assure you, I did that rescue. I did not ask anybody to rescue me out of that motel room. I did not ask my girlfriend, to come save me and call 911. I did not want to go to treatment. In fact, I definitely did not want to go to a 28-day treatment center that ended up being 6 weeks. Some of us are sicker than others. But what happened is, and I entered that treatment center on April the 11th of 1977. And by God's grace in this program, I haven't had a drink since. When I entered that program, I had been detoxed twice before. And when I entered that program, I started getting pretty jittery. And I walked up to the nurse's station asking for my tablets because I was really nervous and jittery. And the director of that treatment center said, "No, Polly, not this time. There's a shot of Dilantin, and we're not going to let you die. But you need to know how sick you really are." And what happened is 3 days later, I came out of that detox room, and I had pulled out my hair. I had clawed my face. I'd seen things. It was just, and I saw him, and I was so angry. And I said, "I can't even believe that you could treat me like that. You don't treat an animal like that." And he looked at me with so much love, and he put his hands on my shoulders, and he said, "Polly, if you make it, you'll love me. If you don't, it really doesn't matter." And I know today, I am so grateful that I know today how sick I really am. And sometimes, even on my worst day, and I can think about what it was like and what those days were like, and I think how grateful I am to be sober, because nothing has ever been as bad or more shameful or more humiliating than those days in my life. And while I was in that treatment center, they started taking us to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. People started coming into that treatment center, which is what I do today, which is what I've been doing since I got sober, because I know how important it is to go in there and bring the message of Alcoholics Anonymous into that treatment center. Those people set me on fire. I just started to fall in love with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I got out of treatment, and it has followed me to this very day, I can't do enough for AA. I can't go to enough meetings. I love Alcoholics Anonymous with a passion. And I am so grateful that of all the things that have happened in my life, that feeling that I feel for this program remains. It remains. I sponsor a lot of people. I'm into a lot of service. And it's what puts the smile on my face and the skip in my step. It is absolutely the thing that makes me so happy. There's nothing that makes me feel better than to sit in a room and somebody stand up and say, "My name is such and such, and I'm an alcoholic." Those words are magic to me. They're absolutely magic. And I started, when I got out of treatment, in this treatment center, they told us we needed to get a sponsor. And I had become I had gotten such a deep love for the man in that detox center who had saved my life out of that motel. And so what I did is I asked him if he would sponsor me. And he said he would. And he said, but don't call me while you're in treatment. You're in treatment. You be at my house the day you get out of treatment. And that was my first sponsorship direction, that I be at his house the day I got out of treatment. And I ended up, when I got out of treatment, I went straight to his house. And he didn't live far from me. He lived in the same housing development that I did. And I went to his house. And I announced to him when I got there that I was on my 6th step. And I told him that I had done my 5th step the day before in treatment. And he said, no, Polly, that's treatment center cycle battle. You are on your 1st step. We are going to do the steps out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's exactly what we did. And I had been 6 weeks in that treatment center. And by the time I was 2 months sober, he had laid out, I'd gone there, we'd done step 1, 2, and 3, and he had laid out how to do a 4th step. And it wasn't a written autobiography, as he had told me that the 5th step that I did in treatment makes a great life story, but it doesn't do anything for inventory. So he had me write out my inventory, and I would be ready to give that to him when I was 2 months sober. I started doing the 12th step right away. Because what he said is, when I went to his house that day, is he says, Polly, you have a car. And because you have a car, you're going to go, and he was the director of this detox center. He says, you're going to pick up these people from detox and you're going to carry them to these. You're going to begin to pick up people and take them to these. That is going to be your job in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so right away, he got me in to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I am so grateful. And I just thought I was really something, because I was picking up these people and taking them taking them to meetings. And it made me so happy. In 2 months of sobriety, I did my 5th step with Frank. And what happened is when I did my 5th step, he looked at me and he said, Polly, you're going to have to make amends to those boys. Now, when I did my first 5th step, I had 5 things on it. I had my mother and dad, my husband, the United States Air Force, and the Baptist Church. I had my 2 sons on harms done, because I had no resentment attached to my boys. And so that was when I did my first 5th step. And he said to me, you're going to make amends to those boys. And he said to me for the first time, I knew it in my heart of hearts, but he looked at me and he said, Polly, you are a child abuser. And that's when he said, you're going to make amends to these boys. And I was just horrified. How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that? My sons were 14 and 16 years old. I had drugged them through the whole beginning of their life, through the disease of alcoholism. So what he had me do was write everything out on a 3x5 card. And he said, if you don't write it down, you may not get it out. And then he had me write on another card, I'm so sorry that happened to you, and I will spend the rest of my life being the very best mom I can be. And I went and I made amends to my sons, and I did both of them together. This is not what I recommend for the women I sponsor. I realized after I had done that probably was not a good idea to do. So I had them both at the same time. I made amends to them, and I just read my little cards and all of the things that I could remember, which was a lot, but that I could remember. And when I got through, I did just what the big book said. I asked them if I had left anything out or if they had anything to say to me. And both of my sons just started firing at me like I had two Uzis coming. They were so angry. And they started screaming how angry they were and what I had done to them, how ashamed they were of me, how angry they were with me. They just got years of anger out. And I just stood there and read my little card. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And I will spend the rest of my life being the very best mom I can be. I'm so grateful I had a sponsor. I'm so grateful that I had sponsor direction, because I'm so grateful I got to do that. I'm so grateful my sons got that moment. And you know, a lot of things along the way. We made a lot of amends since then. And a lot of things have been repaired since then. But that was the beginning. That was the beginning of a lifetime of being able to make living amends. When I first got sober, I was not a poster child for AA. What had happened is I started having a lot of affairs in Alcoholics Anonymous, started bringing more shame to myself, staying away from my family, my husband and my two boys, because now I'm doing AA all the time. So I'm not finding any balance here at all. Now I just do AA, I can't do the rest of it. And I've become really good friends with this man, Dave Pistol. And we become friends, and I tell him everything, and we just became soulmates. But I did not have an affair with Dave. Now, he sponsored a lot of the men I did have affairs with, and so he knew more about me than he needed to. But what happened is as our friendship grew, when I was 3.5 years sober, excuse me, and when he was 4.5 years sober, he came to me and he said, "Polly, I'm in love with you, but I don't want to have an affair with you. I want to marry you." And God willing, and the creek don't rise, come October the 27th, 2020, Dave and I will be married 40 years. And I've been able to spend 40 years with the man of my dreams. And Dave and I have had such a ride. We have had such a wonderful, wonderful time. We have got to travel the world. There's a woman on this Zoom that got to live with us for close to 2 years. We opened our home to people. I mean, our home was full of alcoholics. It was amazing. We had the most fun in Southern California. And Dave and I have had so much fun and have done so many things in Alcoholics Anonymous. It has been such a journey. But life's been in session. So life has shown up. And I'll just talk about Dave and I. We moved to Southern. Let me put it this one first. When I was 3 years sober, I had gone to a conference in Austin, Texas, and I'd heard a woman speak, and her name was Dottie Harris. And I'm telling you, she touched my heart. She touched me so deeply. Now, when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I had such a hard time with God. And Frank, when we were doing the first 3 steps, Frank told me to just, Polly, just believe that I believe. Because I believed that I was going to burn in hell and all these things were going to happen. And Frank said, Polly, I did not find God in the Catholic Church. And I'm a priest. I found God in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Just believe in my God. Just believe that I have. Just believe that I believe. And then I met Dottie. And Dottie had a relationship, the sweetest relationship with the God of her understanding. She was very Christian. She was into a lot of scripture. She was just an amazing woman. And she started to give me this gentleness and this love. And that all that God was pure love. That's all. That God was pure love. And because I'm old, I got to meet some people that were so amazing. I got to hear Chuck Chamberlain talk. I got to hear him say that we have one problem, and that problem is conscious separation from God and man. And we have one solution, and that's conscious contact with God and man. That's all I've got to do, is I've got to get it with God, and I've got to get it with you. That's what it's all about. That's my job. That's what I'm here to do. This is my journey. And she taught me that. She taught me how to love. And she would say, Polly, this is just a spiritual classroom. And everything that happens here is whatever lesson we have to learn. Whatever it is, whatever is happening to you right here and now is what you have needed to experience in this lifetime. That's what you need to do. And that's what she gave me a God that was so loving and so sweet. And I was not afraid. And she said, Polly, if it's not love, it's not God. That's not God. And I began to have that feeling, and she taught me how to have that feeling. And I got to begin to see that connection with my parents. And what I realized is they had given that to me. They had given me that love. And so what happened is when I was 6.5 years sober, my youngest son called me on the phone and he said, Mom, I want what you have. And James is 36 years sober, and I've gotten to walk this with my son. And Dottie used to talk about we get to do do-overs. She's going to call it repeat for correction. I have 5 grandchildren. And I'm here to tell you I've had more fun with my grandchildren. They're 27 to ages 21 now. They're all grown. But I had so much fun. I was a roller coaster riding grandma. I had so much fun with my grandkids, and I got to be there for them. And it was an amazing healing for me and my sons. Also, Dottie would talk about we get to do do-overs. And what has happened is 5 years ago, my husband got sick. And I never could take care of my first husband. And he died 21 years ago. And he married a beautiful woman, and she's still alive, and she's my son's stepmother. And because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm still in touch with her. It's beautiful. I mean, this is what AA repairs everything. And what happened is Dave got sick 5 years ago. And what has happened is I'm Dave's caregiver. And I've been Dave's caregiver for 5 years. And I have been able to I am honored and privileged that I get to take care of my husband. I am so grateful that I got a second chance. I'm so grateful that I've been able to do that. I'm going to tell you 2 really fast stories that are just amazing, and that God is so good. A year and a half ago, my husband was really ill, and he had just gone right to the edge, and it looked like he was going to die. And I had a friend, and she says, Polly, do you mind? And it was her minister. She said, do you mind if I ask Gary to come pray for Dave? And I said, oh, no, please do. And Gary came and prayed for Dave. And then Dave was in the hospital for 10 days, and when that Medicare runs out, they move you to a nursing home, and we moved Dave to a nursing home, and he was in a terrible way. But Gary kept coming, and he kept praying for Dave. And shortly thereafter, they even evaluated him for hospice. But by God's grace, that didn't happen. But what happened is Vicki said to me, Polly, would you like to come to church with me? And Dave and I had always gone to church, but we'd gone to non-denominational churches. And she said, would you like to come to church with me? And I said, yes. And I went to that church with her that Sunday. And I walked in that church, and I swear I was just covered. I just felt like I had just been covered with the grace of God in that church. And they're really big. God's got a huge sense of humor because Dave and I now are members of the Southside Baptist Church. And that Baptist church was on every one of my inventories. And now I am a member. It's so amazing how God puts all that to rest. Also, a year and a half ago, my oldest son, he turned 60. May the 9th, my oldest son turned 60 years old. A year and a half ago, at age 59, he called me and told me that he was going to rehab. This past March, I got to be in meetings with him, and it has been so amazing. And I have this beautiful relationship with my youngest son. It's just been a beautiful relationship and healing. There was always just this wedge between my oldest son and me. And what happens is today, that wedge is gone. And today, I know what that wedge was. That wedge was alcoholism. I am so grateful that I got to live long enough to see him get sober. And I'm grateful that he got sober before alcohol took him down. God is so good. He's so merciful. And he definitely is always on time.
Thank you so much, Polly. Yeah, thank you. Tonight, I have asked Beth to read the promises.
Hi, my name is Beth. I'm an alcoholic. Promises are found on page 83 and 84 in our big book. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. Thank you. Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Beth. Before Polly takes us out with a prayer of her choice, I want to thank all the readers and also announce that next Friday, same ID, no password, we have Steve L. from Redondo Beach, California. Polly, will you take us out with a prayer of your choice?
Yes. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And please, I'm losing it. Please forgive us. Lead us. Help me out. I'm losing it.
Forgive us for our trespasses.
Forgive us our trespasses. Forgive us for those who trespass against us, and forgive us for our trespasses. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. It must be late. I can't believe I couldn't do that. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed.
That's okay. Let me let everybody unmute themselves so they can thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you so much, Polly.
Thank you, Polly. Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you very
Amazing.
much.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Polly.
I'll see
Love you.
tomorrow. Love you.
Good story.
Bye.
Awesome, awesome, awesome.